Yeah.
Good morning. Welcome to the Health In Show, an affiliate program of Homeopathy World Community. Today is Monday, August 13th, 2012. I'm your host, Debby Bruck, founder of HWC, the Homeopathic World Community, and we will be missing our co-host, Dr. Deepak Sharma, today. He's not able to join us of the Orbix Clinics. And we have Joette Calabrese with us, and we're so pleased to present her and all that she does in the homeopathic world. Just saying hello out there across the internet. Hi, Joette.
Hi, Debbie. Thanks for inviting me.
I'm glad you're here, and I'm going to also introduce Amnon Nissan of Nissan Communications.
Good morning.
He's our the guy who runs the show, and we depend upon him. I'm surprising you because I have a couple of little quotes today. I know that your heart is with moms and empowering moms, so I thought I would say these couple of quotes. A mom's hug lasts long after she lets go. And I don't have any author for that, but it really, I felt that one. I felt that hug. and I know that when we do get a hug, it makes a huge difference in how we feel, just the way homeopathic remedies can change our energy. Another one is by an unknown author. Of the formative period for building character for eternity is in the nursery. The mother is queen of that realm and sways a scepter more potent than that of kings or priests. So that's why women are strong, and you want to empower them. And the last, well, I'll wait. I'll send some more out later. Let me just introduce Joette a little bit more. She has degrees, many degrees, and associated with the CCH and the RS Om, and she has practiced as a classical homeopathic consultant since 1997. Joette began her studies in classical homeopathy in 1986, just a couple of years before me, and completed her 5-year degrees with the North American Homeopathic Master Clinician course and the Dynamic School of Advanced Homeopathy in Toronto. She has studied with world-class homeopaths such as Lou Klein, Jeremy Scher, Jan Scholten, Andre Slane, Richard Moskowitz, MD, and Dr. Ramakrishnan. I know all those names. Maybe our listeners won't know who they are because we have people from all over the world in all realms of life. They're not all homeopaths, but these are really wonderful teachers and homeopaths. We also, I understand we have a caller coming in, but I want to finish introducing you. Miss Joette is an official spokesperson for the nutrition organization. Everybody's heard of the Western A. Price Foundation in Washington, D.C. She is nationally certified by the North American Society of Homeopaths and the Council for Homeopathic Certification, accrediting organization that are dedicated to maintaining high standards of homeopathy in North America. So with those qualifications, we're going to get fantastic information, education on today's show. And I appreciate those people who are on the chat today, commenting, asking your questions, and calling in. So who is on the line with us? Anybody listening in, or they're just called in to listen? Can they hear us? No. Okay. So I was going to ask you, Joette, how you even got started in homeopathy and what drew you to it.
Well, as most homeopaths, we start out with some story about our own ill health or our children's ill health. Most people are not going to look for alternative medicine unless they've been disappointed with the conventional form. So that's my story too, and that is that back when I was in my early 30s, I got very sick, chronically ill, and was out of work because I couldn't work because of it. It was chronic fatigue and asthma migraines. I mean, the list went on and on. I don't know if anyone wants to hear all of that. But what came of it was I had gone from doctor to doctor looking for results. And what happened instead was I was put on medications. And then for every medication, there was a side effect. And for every side effect, there was a new medication. And it just went on and on like this until finally I said, this is it. I'm worse with the drugs than I am even without them. I might as well just suffer the consequences of whatever my body's trying to do. So I lived with the migraines, I lived with the chronic fatigue, and started to study a little bit about herbs, which are much more readily available than homeopathy, certainly back in those days in the 80s. And I learned a lot. It was very pleasurable, and I learned a little bit about nutrition as well. Made a lot of mistakes along the way, but still did learn a great deal. But it wasn't until I was pregnant with our first son. I gained enough health to be able to actually get pregnant, which was I was blessed to do. And I went to a lecture offered by a doctor who was from the Himalayan Institute in Honesdale, Pennsylvania. He was an MD and a homeopath, and so he came with the credentials that I had been looking for. I really wanted, it wasn't about homeopathy because I didn't even know what it was. I was just looking for someone who had some alternative information so that I could protect, not only get well, more fully well myself, but also to protect my forthcoming family. And this doctor just turned my head at this lecture. He was talking about vaccinations, and my family and I, my husband and I, were still considering which vaccinations we were going to subject our child to and which ones we were going to eliminate, and what schedule we were going to follow. So in doing that, I went to this lecture, and this man made it very clear that for every disease that has been known to mankind, in infectious disease, in which there's a vaccination that has been determined, there are homeopathic remedies that have done that and better. Historically, in hospitals throughout the world for the last close to 200 years. And I had never heard of a concept like this before. This was all new to me. So by the time that I left that lecture, I decided to buy a homeopathy kit. It was a little kit, about this big, and it had about 30 remedies in it and a simple book. It was not about vaccines. It was simply about how to raise children using homeopathy to deal with, otitis media and conjunctivitis, bronchitis, those kinds of things. So I went on my merry way. This doctor was just traveling around the country teaching this. And when he did this, he happened to stop in my hometown. I could not hire him. I really had hoped that I could work with him, but he was only teaching. He was no longer practicing. So I went on my merry way, and I had my baby, and it was a beautiful pregnancy, uninterrupted by any problems. The birth was perfectly natural, and my baby was born and was as healthy as can be. The right weight, everything was correct. I had already spoken to the pediatrician who I had chosen that we were going to visit, and before the birth. And when I went in to see him with my newborn baby, I had reiterated what I had discussed with him before, and that was that I wanted to postpone some of the vaccines. In fact, all of the vaccines for a while, until I felt that his immune system, our son's immune system, was more fully developed. In doing that, he had agreed. He had said, yeah, that was, he would go along with that. But that first appointment when our son was 6 weeks old, for the first well baby checkup, I was holding my baby, and in came the nurse and plopped something in my son's mouth. I said, wow, what?
I lost sound.
Well, I was very disturbed to learn that that's what it was, particularly when right there in front of the doctor and the nurse was my chart indicating that I wanted to wait at least a couple of months or so before we agreed to these vaccines. But there was nothing I could do. I mean, I wasn't going to argue. It was what it was. I left the office just hoping for the best. 3 days later, our son, who was perfectly healthy, got a fever of 105. It was just actually a little bit over 105, and he became lethargic, and it was a very scary event. Um, because I was a newborn, I had a newborn baby, I had no experience with newborns, and I knew nothing other than this doctor who had um, uh, uh, allowed that vaccine to be given.
So
So
did you say what the doctor had given to the person to your child in his mouth? And also we
it was
have
polio.
oh,
It had the polio vaccine. It was the oral polio vaccine.
okay, and also we do have a caller on the line, so whoever's there might want to jump in and make a comment or ask a question. Can we hear you? Any sound? So whoever it was, keep trying, and maybe just chat on the chat there and let us know who you are calling in. I hope I didn't interrupt your train of thought.
No, no, no
Okay.
problem.
So this is really frightening to see your child have 105 fever.
Yes, it was
and
frightening.
Totally
It was
unexpected.
frightening. So I had a book that I had purchased at that lecture and a kit. And the book was, of course, had nothing about vaccinosis, as we call that today. There was nothing about vaccine reactions. All it had was a chapter on fever. And I knew that I had confidence that I could do this, that I could take care of this situation. I must admit, I was frightened. But my thought was, if I take my baby back to the pediatrician, we were going to go on the route that I had personally gone with all the medications. And I knew that the first thing they would offer him would be probably Tylenol, acetaminophen, and an antibiotic. And that was precisely what I wanted to avoid. So I poured through this book. I think there were something like 300 pages, and I knew that the answer had to be in this book. I just had that confidence. By the way, it was Dana Ullman's book, Everybody's Guide to Homeopathic Medicines, and I still have the book more for posterity than anything else because it is beat up and torn apart, and it was his first edition, and there are many editions that I have. Yeah, this is the second edition, but I have another edition. The original one was yellow.
Yes, I have that one too. The old
Yeah,
one.
everyone has that book. Dana Ullman did a great job, and it was also Stephen Cummings as well. So I poured through it and found the chapter on fever and took a guess. I opened up the kit, and to be honest, I don't really remember what my rationale was for choosing sulfur, but I chose it. It may have been the fact that he was so hot, and sulfur has a lot of heat related to it. In other words, you use sulfur when someone has a great deal of heat. It may have been that there was a slight odor coming from him, and he was only 6 weeks old, so that was a little unusual for a newborn. And that, too, is a keynote for the use of sulfur. And this went on for 2.5 days. He was barely nursing, and of course my concern, although I didn't realize at the time the degree to which I should have been concerned, was regarding dehydration. He was nursing, but barely nursing. And I did nothing for 2.5 days but hold my baby in my arms. My mother lived next door, my parents lived next door, and my mother would come over and help me, and I had my closest friend with me when we looked through the book one last time and then finally discerned that, yes, indeed, we were going to use sulfur. It was sulfur 30.
Did you give something to yourself as well? Because now we know if you take something, the baby's going to get it. So were you in a sulfur?
No, I had no concept. Yeah. I had no training whatsoever. This was the first book. I barely had opened up the first chapter when this chapter in our lives had begun. So I really had no knowledge. But with the book that I had, and the tiny bit of knowledge that I had, and really it was embryonic, I decided to give him sulfur, and I put 4 little sulfur pills into his mouth, and which was, by the way, parched. This was scary. I'm not sure I would recommend this to moms, to let a fever go that long without getting some kind of help with the potential of a child getting parched like this and dehydrated. But later on, when I went back and reviewed it, I realized that it wasn't as serious as I thought because of he wasn't as dehydrated as I had considered the possibility at the time. I put the pills in his mouth, And meanwhile, my mother was very worried and said, come on, you've got to get him to the hospital. You got to get him to the doctor's office. And I said, no, I think I can do this. Mm-hmm. And Debbie, I can't tell you exactly how many minutes it was, but it was about 40 minutes, maybe 60 minutes after putting these 4 pills into his mouth. And the fever was vanished.
Incredible.
He felt firm in my arms. He began nursing, and he never had another fever again. He's 24. He's about to be 25 years old. He's an airline pilot right now, and he's never had another fever again, ever.
This is an incredible story,
isn't it?
But it's the power of observation for you to set that confidence and belief in yourself, which you probably would like other mothers to experience. That for little boo-boos, they don't have to be 105 fever. Then I would run to the hospital with that type of a fever. But for small things around the house, and as they gain confidence, they can learn more and more. But you know, because of your own health issues, must have felt like you don't want your kid to go through this.
That's right.
What you had been through.
That's right. And the interesting part of mothering that I've learned through the years, having 2 other children, and also in teaching homeopathy and working with many hundreds, if not thousands of moms, is that we have a fear of childhood illness. And what we really should be fearing are things like accidents and injuries. Those are the fearful things. When we realize that childhood illness is actually important and valuable, now we can start looking at it from a slightly different angle. If we are afraid of childhood illness, we will stop that illness and keep the child from building immunity that is to be used for the rest of the child's life. If instead I had given him antibiotics and acetaminophen, the acetaminophen would have brought down the fever, and it would not have allowed this fever to do what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to cook off the virus or bacteria, whatever it might have been. I suspect it. I mean, I don't really know which it was.
That's the
not
body's,
that it really matters.
The body's innate healing system. We have to allow it to work.
Yes. And by using the sulfur 30, what we're doing is not suppressing that fever. We were stimulating his body's ability to get past the fever. But had I done nothing other than just nursed him and kept him hydrated, to be honest, my guess is he would have been just fine. The Dr. Mendelsohn, one of my favorite doctors, I'm looking for his book right now. It's an old one. He's not a homeopath. He's an old-time pediatrician. Let's see if I can get this right here.
Yeah, How to Raise a Healthy Child.
In Spite of Your Doctor.
In Spite of Your Doctor. Okay.
By Robert S. Mendelsohn. It's an old book. He's passed away, I think, probably 20 years ago. And he says that a fever, and many other sources, I've gone on many sites, Harvard Medical School, etc., the American Academy of Pediatrics. I've gone on many of their sites, and the fever is not dangerous until it's past 106. And I wonder how many pediatricians have ever seen a fever of 106. And 106 comes on not generally from childhood illness, but rather from head injuries or poisonings or heat exhaustion, heat stroke. That's when you see a fever that goes higher than 106. The body naturally regulates itself. So once my little guy had that sulfur, he was good as rain. I mean, right as rain, as they say, as good as can be. He was more than just cured of a fever. He was better than he was before he got the fever. Now, I don't know if I can even explain that, but he was more settled in himself. It seemed right. It seemed correct for his body to have gotten that.
Very often I tell people that when a child has an illness, there's a growth spurt following that illness, and everybody recognizes it and sees, and even in yourself, you can see the clarity in your thinking, you can see the burst of energy and everything else that you're able to move forward in your life after an illness. I think we might have a caller on the line, and we're going to try and get them in if they will respond to. It's the same caller. Anybody there? Well, if that person is not going to answer, then we'll just move ahead. And we've acknowledged, when we acknowledge what's in ourselves and what's facing fears and challenges, everyone who's going through coaching today realizes this is the truth, that we must face what's coming to us and not avoid or push or suppress. We have to look at it directly, and then we can move through it and be better.
Well, I tell moms they need to get their PhD in motherhood. We can't start into this journey without doing some homework. And there's a lot of homework. This is not easy to learn homeopathy thoroughly. You can learn enough to get past the kinds of situations such as a fever, as I said, conjunctivitis, otitis media, head, an injury to the arm, or a bee sting. You can do a lot with that with very little knowledge. But if you are someone who is not comfortable with drugs and a lot of the procedures and testing that I find often quite superfluous in the medical paradigm, then you have to do your homework. I mean, if you want to take it on, you got to take it on. But I have to say, most moms tell me, well, they're too big.
I just lost your sound. Wait a minute, I just lost.
I find that what occurs is it's a labor of love. There's nothing more delicious than taking care of your own children and knowing the answers. There's nothing more satisfying than listening to your child describe exactly what's going on. And that's what we do in homeopathy. We don't say, oh, sore throat, here you go, antibiotic. No. We want to know, how does it hurt? When does it hurt? Does it feel like a sticking or a sharp or a burning pain? Or is it more like a grasping pain? Are you feeling restless? Are you cold? Are you frightened? Are you feeling as though you need to be held? All of those aspects of who the child is allows us to get to know our children well, and also allows the child to feel loved and cared for.
And secure.
It's the ultimate of medicine, because it gives us those requires those observational skills that are so innate in motherhood.
It sounds like it gives a feeling of security and creates a bond between the parent and the child, and an understanding that the child feels that they're listened to, that they're really understood, and probably gives us such a strong foundation in life. And this is what you do for moms, right? You teach them.
Yes, my goal and what I've been doing for many years is to teach mothers how to empower themselves, because it is in our court. My message is, it's not up to the government, folks. It's not up to the AMA. It's not up to the pharmaceutical companies. It's up to one person and one person only, and that's we as mothers. It's up to us to take control. If it's as meaningful as mothers say it is, and I believe it is, then we have to take the bull by the horns and take care of our children. Now, I'm not going to tell you that I can take care of every situation. And if one of my children were in an automobile accident, obviously we get ourselves to the emergency room, no doubt about it. However, on the way, we're using a homeopathic remedy that will help slow down the action of a potential shock or injury, internal injury, bleeding, calms the person down and settles them into being more comfortable with what's forthcoming. So there is a place for modern medicine, there's no doubt about it. But the first place for medicine should be in the home. That's where it belongs. That's where food belongs, from being prepared in the home. That's where education belongs. I'm not saying that everyone should homeschool, although I did, but that's where the first education starts, in the kitchen, while the mom is making the meals and the children are at her feet. There's nothing better in life than to have that paradigm in the home. And using homeopathy is an extension, as far as I'm concerned, of committed mothering.
The family seems to be your primary concern in life.
It is.
Yes.
It's society's foundation. If we lose this family, what do we have left?
Well, I'm going to throw out those two quotes. These are the last ones that I have.
Okay.
One is by Emily Dickinson, and she says, "A mother is one to whom you hurry when you are troubled."
Oh, wow, that is perfect.
And then,
so that's why we're so burdened.
yeah, well, we need something to care for moms too. And then we have another one by Marion C. Gazerti, "From a Little Spoonful of Chicken Soup for the Mother's Soul." And
Yes.
she says, "Mother love is the fuel that enables a normal human being to do the impossible." And this is the time of the Olympics, and we know so many of those Olympians are using homeopathy to get ahead, and they do, and they win the gold. So we do go beyond what is imaginable, go beyond what we think could be our limitations by using homeopathic remedies and creating that love and bond between mother and child.
And I'll bet behind every one of those Olympians was a mother.
Good. No doubt about that. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We have a bunch of questions in the chat room, and I'm going to take a look at those here. Dr. Wakwar from Florida has been concerned about that issue of vaccinations. And Dr. Wakwar, on Thursdays, Alan Phillips talks with us for the past over 2 years about exemptions and waivers. And there are ways that parents can sign forms that say you do not have to take that. He says, what if a vaccination has been given? What can be done after that with homeopathy? And let's see, he says, we are waiving vaccinations. My computer screen just jumped. So why don't we answer that question? What if a child has already, is older and they're just learning about homeopathy?
You mean in terms of vaccinosis or someone who's been damaged by vaccines?
He doesn't say specifically. I suppose to answer that question, if a person has had a vaccine and without any side effects, then nothing is necessarily needs to be done. But in the case of somebody we're seeing so many children with ADD, ADHD, autism, and other types of diseases that may be attributed to vaccinosis.
There are homeopaths who specialize in that work, especially in autism. And they work with the homeopathic remedies based on how it's presenting today. So based on homeopathic literature, the theory is, and I have seen it occur many times, that you can help antidote some of the side effects or the bad reactions from vaccines. It's, I would love to be able to say, oh, it's as simple as this, this, and that, but it isn't. It depends on how it's presenting in the child. Some children present with autism, some are just spectrum autism, some are behavioral disorders, some are reading disorders, some are food intolerances, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a food for, or I should say, all of that information is fodder for the information that's required in order to determine the correct remedy or remedies.
And there's tons of literature, even
there is a lot, yeah.
Even from 200 years ago, Hahnemann was using specific remedies. We had earlier on the show Dr. Isaac Golden with homeoprophylaxis and his studies. We have people talking about the massive inoculation, homeopathic inoculation in Brazil of millions of people and the positive, successful results of that. We also have people like Kate Birch, who has written thick books all about homeopathy and vaccinations. And anybody can purchase that, study, learn, gain that knowledge so you can make a educated decision for your child. So
How about that fabulous study, Debbie, in Cuba in
that's
treating leptospirosis? A gorgeous study. The leptospirosis nosode was used as a prophylactic to protect the population. And it was a stunning, and I love that word because that's exactly the word. If you Google stunning results in vaccination of the Cuban population for leptospirosis, you'll find the information that was put out by the Findlay Institute, who was behind the movement to do that in Cuba. There were millions of people. I want to say it was 1.2 or 1.7 million, something like that, number of people who were protected from the typical leptospirosis spirochete that occurs every year,
right.
except that year.
And Ananda Moore she's from Toronto, is going back to Cuba to continue her documentation of the results of that. And that's fascinating. I know I've written about a blog about it. If I find it, I'll put it up there for you. Do we have a caller?
Same caller. Try again.
Okay, trying again. We're giving you a chance to ask your question or tell us your comment, whoever's calling in. I hear some sound. You've got to put your mic on or maybe turn off the browser. One of the things about when you call into a show is in order to speak, you're going to get an echo or reverberation if you don't turn off your browser. So I don't think it's...
Hello?
Yeah, somebody's
Hello?
calling in. We hear you.
Hello, okay.
Oh, shoot. No, I hung up.
Oh, boy, we lost you. Try that again, and we'll see if we can get you on the line. Okay, so we do have really positive results. We have scientific evidence to back up that homeopathy works. I mean, to me, there's no better proof than your own personal experience. That is the final word in my book. But we also have tons of literature, both today's clinical trials and what we call provings in the past. And so, do you want to make a comment about that?
Well, I know the naysayers of homeopathy are always looking towards saying that we don't have any information, we don't have double-blind data, we don't have scientific proof, and that's absolutely hogwash. But I suppose if you say it enough times, some people will believe it. I always urge folks to truly do their homework and find out more, because homeopathy is over 200 years old. And I happen to live in Buffalo, New York, and our main hospital, the flagship hospital of our city, was called Millard Fillmore Hospital. In fact, it's just closing now. Isn't that interesting after all these years? But when it was first built as a lovely hospital on a beautiful circle in the city, it was called Buffalo Homeopathic Hospital. And folks don't know that there were over 100 homeopathic hospitals in our country. 40% or close to that were of the physicians in the U.S. were homeopathic physicians and were held in high esteem. They had their own organizations and they ran hospitals and clinics, and people didn't discern between, or differentiate, I should say, between a homeopathic physician necessarily and a conventionally trained or allopathic physician. They just went to the local doctor. And if the one that was closest to them, that their sister-in-law recommended, was a homeopath, then that's who they went to. Nobody thought about, or I don't think they gave it an awful lot of thought, the public, as to what kind of doctor they were going to necessarily. So, as you know, and we could get into that whole story as to what happened in the 1940s with the market share of the infighting that occurred as a result of fear for losing market share, that the conventional physicians and their organizations set out to wipe out homeopathy, and it was a very successful campaign. I come from a marketing background. I used to work for NBC, and I can tell you that their campaign, I'll give them this, was brilliant. It was well executed, well funded. They thought of everything. They went after homeopathy on every front and successfully wiped it out of even modern day usage in this country and North America and Canada, of course. Of course, that didn't happen in Europe, and it didn't happen in South America or India, and of course we have to think, so why didn't it happen there? You know, and so where's the pharmaceutical industry based?
Yeah.
And who has to lose if the pharmaceutical industry has us nipping at their heels with this kind of medicine? So that's why I urge moms to stay close to what makes sense, what's logical, not what supports an industry. And don't get me wrong, I believe in entrepreneurship. I believe in capitalism. I believe that we can make a go of this. We can continue with this. This is an example of capitalism gone awry with the pharmaceutical.
Okay, we lost a little sound. No?
That appear to be intended to help folks, such as the American Cancer Association, who doesn't even believe, for example, that we should watch what we're eating. It's wild to me. And the American Diabetic Association, where they say you should be eating candy if you have diabetes.
Oh no!
I mean, if you do your homework, you realize the ludicrousy of those kinds of programs that are really out there just to, in my estimation, just to keep themselves going.
So the purpose of your teachings, and you have courses that you give
I do. Well, if folks are interested, they can certainly go to my website. But I have CDs and that I've produced and downloads and some simple books to get moms started. I also lecture throughout the country. I'm speaking in a number of venues this year. And I also have a course that we have gotten up and running. It's been launched back in April, but there are people still joining it because it's a webinar. It's a monthly webinar that will be 12 months. And for each module, as we call it, there's a 3-hour webinar. We all meet on I think it's the second Tuesday of each month. And I teach based on a book that each student receives. They also receive auxiliary books so that they can study on their own, and we have a forum, we have a newsletter. It's an all-inclusive way to teach moms how to keep their kids off of the medical off of drugs.
Yeah, well, that is our goal, to empower.
It is our goal.
That is our goal.
I'm sorry, Debbie.
Yeah, we want to create waves of awareness. That's my goal. Let people know, have people like you, experts in the field, speak and tell real stories about healing experiences to the folks who are out there, to let them know where they can learn more, and also to highlight what's going on in the political world, the medical world, and because we need for people to be critical thinkers, to really discern for themselves what is right and what is wrong for them, and what information and who is giving them the information. We have on Mercola.com today a shocking story revealing how the FDA is abandoning drug safety and all about the whistleblowers. And this is just the tip of the iceberg of what is happening that people do not realize when they take a drug that has not been really tested for safety, and when the labels are not being telling us exactly what the side effects are or what is in the drug, and the same thing for our food. So it's a whole new world out there, and that's why we are on the show telling people to wake up and start reading for themselves alternative information.
Well, it's always interesting. You're talking about the FDA. I would love to see the studies that show that antibiotics and acetaminophen and some of the other medications that are given to a baby. I would like to see the double-blind study showing babies who have taken that and long-term, and what happens after not just the actual clinical observation of the infection being suppressed, but also I would like to see what happens after 5 years of children taking these kinds of medications. Where's the double-blind study? Where's the science? I would think that it's probably illegal to do studies on babies. So it's, again, supposition that these are safe. because what we're finding is that acetaminophen is being connected. If you go online now and check this out, it's everywhere. It's been news for the last couple of months that acetaminophen causes asthma in certain children, often within minutes of being given the medication. Antibiotics set up children, in my estimation, and many others, including Joseph Mercola and many, many other doctors and PhDs, that antibiotics cause long-term effect, even just one round of it, in terms of what the gut is now able to digest. So we're wondering where gluten intolerance and dairy intolerance is coming from. Look to the antibiotic, folks. It's like as far as I'm concerned, an antibiotic is like a bulldozer that's traveling through a virgin forest and wiping it out. That forest will start growing again eventually, but it will never be virgin. Once you've given that antibiotic, you have to think very strong and hard before you offer a child something like that, and that child depends on you. I'm not saying there's never a time when you would give an antibiotic, but it's overzealous medical care, as far as I'm concerned, that we're seeing in this country today.
And I know that you have to deal with that in the families that you care for, and that's why you're gung-ho on nutrition, telling them advice about probiotics, about taking yogurt, or eliminating gluten if it's necessary, and other kinds of things. I guess that's what Weston Price. That's why you're a spokesperson for that organization. Would you like to tell us more?
Well, eating yogurt after having taken antibiotics is like trying to plant some seeds in that forest that's been wiped out. It will work, but boy, you got a long way to go. There is, raw milk is very valuable for building immunity.
Raw milk, which is illegal.
Yeah, in some states it is illegal, and you can't sell it in retail stores in certain states. You can in others. In my state, in New York, you have to go to the farmer directly, and I've been using raw milk for my family for close to 19 years. It's all my children have drunk. Well, maybe some water and some kombucha here and there, but to be honest, that's really what the mainstay of their diet, especially not only in their foods but also in their drink. And you just have to get it directly from a farmer, and those kinds of things can help a great deal. But as far as I'm concerned, the prophylactic of not exposing to the child to the drugs in the first place is even a more well-founded way to keep your child healthy throughout life. So those are all backpedalings, and it is important that we eat well, no doubt. It's best that we buy whole foods, that we buy directly from local family farms who are raising with responsible methods, and that we prepare our foods ourselves. Back in the kitchen we go, moms.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean we have to be there all day, but back in that kitchen, it's up to us. If we trust prepared foods, you better count on there's the possibility that what's being put in those prepared foods is not really optimal. The only way we get optimum is to do it ourselves.
What is one thing that you absolutely tell every mom?
Probably the one thing that I tell every mom is to take got across, but I'm happy to repeat it. If we don't take control...
repeat that, please, one more time.
Yes, I'm happy to do that. The one thing probably that I tell most moms is that they need to take control of their family's health themselves. It's like playing a game of chess. If we get our queen and put her out in the middle of the board, the most precious piece, and pull our hand away unwittingly and just hoping that the opposition, whether they're true opposition or not, but whether the forces on the other side will take care of our child, we're being foolish and not having done our homework. We need to hold on to that queen and know not only the move that we've just made, but the next 2 or 3 moves that are going to occur as a result of putting her out there. We better know what that test is going to do, or what will come from that test, from that drug, from that decision. We need to know in advance what is going to happen. If the test is something that you don't want to know about, for example, amniocentesis. There are a lot of moms who say no thank you to having an amniocentesis during pregnancy because what it shows, the point of it is to show that the child may indeed be Down syndrome, for example. Well, so now what? Are we going to abort the child? If you're not willing to abort your child, what do you need the information for? And it might not even be correct. So now you've gone through this pregnancy with this brutal information and fear that your child might not be what you had expected or hoped, and now you have to live with that. And I've talked to many moms who tell me that after the amniocentesis, telling them that indeed their child was Down syndrome, it turned out the child was not Down syndrome.
Wow.
Or if the child was Down syndrome, so what? You're still going to love that child like any other child in your family. You're going to take care of that. So what was the point of that exam? What was the point of subjecting the mother to that fear, plus the potential of doing harm to the baby with a needle being driven into a very sacred, as far as I'm concerned, area of the mother and the baby? So we need to question, what is this test going to show? What will this drug ultimately do?
You know, I think fear runs the medical community.
You bet.
And you know, when you implant that sense of fearfulness within any human being, it changes your hormones, your chemistry, your look on life, how you feel about yourself, just about everything. And when you have fear, instead of what I hear from your voice is that self-confidence, that's what you want to implant and give and provide for your family, the people around you, your friends. You want to give them love and empowerment that they're doing good things and they're fulfilling their mission. And if you create that fear, people are going to back off and create doubt, and it's going to stop them in their tracks. That's the problem with fear and the way that the medical community uses it. You know, I hate to talk about that amniocentesis procedure. It can also be dangerous, you know, with the information that's given and the procedure itself. There are risks. And, you know, it's kind of scary. So tell me, what do I do to relieve that fear? Relieve that sense.
How to relieve the fear?
Yeah.
Educate yourself. The bottom line is we have to educate ourselves. And if you know that fear is a ploy in marketing, in fact, in marketing, as I said, I worked in marketing for years, it is the number one method to get someone to come to your way of thinking. Watch Mad Men. That's what it's all about. If you can frighten someone, you've got them, as long as you have a solution that seems, or at least appears to be, the solution to that person's fear. So use some fear and you've got them all set. I mean, we're going to watch this happen this fall with the vaccinations. They've already started the flu vaccination. I've driven by a couple of stores that, pharmacies that have their signs up already saying, get your flu shot here. How many years are we going to be afraid of these flus that are supposed to wipe us out and have someone on the other end sell an awful lot of vaccines? I've been
taking pictures of all those signs every place I go.
Are you?
Yes, those signs are everywhere.
They're
grocery stores, pharmacies, you know, department stores, and they are year-round. They're not just seasonal. I want to tell folks that if they want to call in and comment, ask a question, if you're in the United States, you can call 919-518-9773. And if you're on Skype, you can call in via Computers 2K Voice. And we'd love to hear what you have to say about today's show, or comment, you know, send some love to Joette.
Yeah, we mothers could use extra, couldn't we?
We could use sleep.
Yeah, oh, that would be nice, wouldn't it?
Yes.
Well, my children are all older now, so I'm not up walking them any longer.
And do you think the young people, I mean, you're out there in the field working with young mothers, are they coming to you for specific reasons, or are you out there letting people know? How does that work for you?
Well, we have Twitter and we do a lot of social marketing. I do a lot of writing. As I said, I do a lot of speaking. We have an e-zine coming out twice monthly. We write a blog weekly. We are very much out there trying to teach moms how to do this. And so we are inundated. I mean, I have staff helping me get through all of the mail that we get, and we get a good amount. Lots of questions and lots of interest. Thank God for the internet.
Yes.
Finally, we have a methodology in order to get to folks that's inexpensive and easy to get this information to young mothers. When I was a young mom, of course, there was no internet then. We're talking, 25 years ago. And not only was there no internet, but how about trying to find a homeopathy book? Dana Ullman and Stephen Cummings' book was the only book that I could find. And we started with an NCH, National Center of Homeopathy's group. It was a subgroup of what they were doing in Washington, D.C., and a group of us studied together for 4 years every Thursday night. A group of moms. We were all trying to find ways to treat our children without resorting to chemical methods. And so the books that we got were sparse. We even had to make copies of them. We even got what I guess I would call black market books. We couldn't find these books. Somebody would go to England, somebody would go to Germany, bring back some books, and then we would copy them because we couldn't get them fast enough to learn. Today, it's everywhere. You can find homeopathy on the internet. You can find lots of homeopaths, lots of good books, lots of courses similar to mine, maybe webinars, maybe not, maybe locally. There are chapters of the National Center for Homeopathy. I can't urge moms enough to make sure that they've done this work before they even think of having a baby, if possible. If you already have your children, here's an opportunity to take care of the ones that have already had antibiotics, and you can do it. There's no doubt about it. This is not that complex. And it suits us as moms to take care of our children in this fashion.
And if you have questions, go to Twitter. Homeopathy Works is Joette. Send your comments there, or what is your website?
The website is homeopathyworks.net. But if you just Google my name, Joette Calabrese, you'll find a lot of my articles and other interviews that I've done, and how to sign up for our free e-zine, and those are fun things to connect with. We're always looking to teach for free as much as possible. So I like to give out. We have a wonderful form, or I should say poster, that you can download on our website that shows first aid methods using homeopathy. We have lots of articles, lots of information on pregnancy and on early childhood that's free. That's the way to get started. Once you've decided that this is the method that you want to employ in your life, then you start committing to, okay, I'll buy a course, or I'll buy some CDs, I'll buy some books. Take it one step at a time. Nobody's making it impossible for you to have to hop right in.
And if you do, there's on the Homeopathy World Community website, on the page with Joette, there's a place where you can get your first kit. And in your first kit, you'll have a little guide that tells you to get started to learn what are this set of remedies good for. And I know that you will be applying them almost right away, because you're either going to have a headache or a tummy ache or a sore throat. There's going to be something that you don't want to go into a full-blown, what you usually go, chronic, or something that keeps returning. You want to stop it in its tracks and just say, oh gosh, that's over with, and now I know what works for me. If you eat a bad melon this summer, what are you going to do? There's always something, right? And don't be when they start asking you at the doctor's office and they want to give a vaccination, begin to question, what is it going to do for you or for your child? What are going to be the repercussions that you might be seeing afterwards? I know my grandson did have a vaccination, and his thigh swelled up the size of a huge thing. Hard rock red. I mean, this is a side effect of the vaccine. And that kind of a fever is something that should be giving you a clue about what's going on in the body. So are there any other questions out there or comments on the chat here? I know Kavitha, thank you for joining us. Dr. Bakar, Juan, Joe, all those folks who are regulars. Kavitha was saying that she used antimonium tartaricum for a vaccine with a respiratory problem. So each child needs something specific, because we have, if you look up the rubrics in the repertory, you're going to see that there are many choices, and that's where the education for you is going to be much needed and help you to understand what to do.
Well, I was just going to say something. I'm giving a lecture in presentations, I should say, in Buffalo for the Weston A. Price Foundation coming up next month. And the title of it is Get Your Kids High. And I don't mean in the way that you're probably thinking, but I'm going to be teaching moms how to allow a fever to blossom. Wonderful. And how far to let it go. If you absolutely must treat, now you use homeopathy. But to be honest, most fevers are benign, and actually, on the other side of the coin, even very useful. Just like a sauna, it cooks off the virus. That's the intention. The fever is not the illness. The virus or the bacteria is the illness. So we don't want to get rid of the messenger, which is the symptom, such as fever. We want to get to the bottom of the issue, stimulate the body's ability to uproot it if we use homeopathy. Or, as I say, let your kids get high.
.net. Okay, we're just going to tell the folks out there one more time, homeopathyworks.net. Because homeopathyworks.com is a place where you can get remedies. It's that's a good place too. A good place to visit, and they've just upgraded their website as well. We have 3 minutes to give our closing remarks. I want to thank all of our listeners. Every one of our shows are archived for your review again, or for sharing. You can get the share HTML code and put it on your website. Contact Joette if you have any further questions. Go to Homeopathy World Community and read thousands of articles about children, about disease, about just about any question that you have. We have remarks and information. I'm also very concerned about the environment, so you're going to read about that. Why don't you say a few words and we'll end.
Well, again, if there's anything that I could offer moms, and I always say mothers and curious others, it doesn't always mean that it's someone who has children. It can be someone who is in charge of pets or wildlife and livestock, etc. But anytime you're in charge of someone, I can't urge you enough to learn the basic principles of homeopathy and the principles of sound nutrition. The two are absolutely unbeatable.
Good pair. I want to thank Amnon so much for being here and doing his thing. I want to tell folks that on Wednesday morning, Dr. Adil Chimthalawala Kasim will be with us on Blog Talk Radio. He is awesome. Listen in, Joette. He's great.
Okay.
And on Thursday at noon on Blog Talk Radio, we have Alan Phillips, attorney at law, talking about vaccinations, and we bring up all the current events, all the news, what's happening today. And we sometimes have special guests call in, and you're welcome to call in and say some remarks. So we want to wish everyone health and well-being and lots of love. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you.
Bye-bye from the Health In Show, Homeopathy
Bye-bye.
Community.
You are tuned to the Nissan Communications Network. Our weekly lineup of call-in programs includes Computers 2K Now with Amnon Nissan, Sundays 9 a.m. to noon. Health In with Debby Bruck, Mondays 11 a.m. till noon. The Scope of Things with Marilyn Shannon, Mondays, 7 to 8 p.m. Breaking Free with Marilyn Shannon, Mondays, 8 to 9 p.m. Reawaken Your Brilliance with Julie Seibert, Wednesdays, 8 to 9 p.m. And if you tuned in too late, you can always watch each program in its entirety or download an MP3 audio file of it at www.nissancommunications.com.